Welcome back to another edition of the Transformation Leaders Podcast. I am Sean Ennis. I'm joined today by my wonderful co-host and partner in crime, David Sudin. And we're going to talk today about one of my favorite things to play with, Claude Code. And today is more of a practical example. So the people who are just listening in, definitely recommend to come on LinkedIn and watch the video, because this should be very instructional to understand where Claude Code is, where it's going, and update you all on a excellent technology tool to help you transform faster, easier, safer, and with fewer resources. So David, can you take us today and show the voodoo that you do so well?
Yep. And we'll give a little bit of voodoo, but we'll also do a little bit of practical, because I want to catch everybody up to kind of what's exploded over the last 60 days regarding Claude Code. There's been a lot of changes, and talk to each of the features, how you might use them, why you want to use them, because a lot of people are just drinking from the fire hose and can't keep up. And there's so many interesting and cool things that have happened in the Claude ecosystem that I just want to make sure that at least everybody's up to speed. Consider this about a part one. I believe we'll be doing maybe a second version of this, where we'll do a practical application in the future, talking specifically about, unfortunately, something that's pretty prevalent. A lot of our friends, a lot of our colleagues have come, gone, maybe in between opportunities. And so I want to show you how to use AI in your resume to build some really cool software, and or minimally, depending on time today, I might even just show you how to do a quick prompt to get you a quick win, to get you going. Other than that, we'll maybe try to build you a full-on application so that you can start keeping this. But these are the housekeeping skills, or at least the prerequisite knowledge that you're going to need to do before we build, something really cool like that. All right, so if you're not familiar, I'm here on the Claude Code documentation. Now, don't get this confused with Claude documentation, because there is Claude docs, and then there's this Claude Code docs. So that's like the first thing to keep your head straight. So we're talking about Claude Code. For those of you that are not familiar, Claude Code is this DOS-box looking thing. If you I might even have just dated myself by saying DOS, but back in the 80s, 90s, people use these command line tools, and it's still available in Windows 11 today. And so you can interact with Claude programmatically in this way. A lot of times people will integrate Claude Code into Visual Studio or VS Code. It's available there. There's like 10 ways to do Claude Code. Anyway, the other way to deal with Claude is to use the Claude application. That's this thing. And you just go ahead and you type into it, and it works just like ChatGPT. It's a really easy to use user interface. There's a bunch of tooling that's connected into it. You can connect it to Docker desktop and integrate a bunch of cool things that's there called MCP servers. Probably getting way, way, way ahead of myself for that. But nonetheless, just know that this is the Claude ecosystem, the Claude Code, and then you have the Claude desktop. And then this is one of the first features that I want to talk to you about today, is the Claude Code for the browser. So I'm going to come up here in my extensions. I have a Claude extension installed, and I'm going to click it. And you've seen this probably a million times with Copilot or even Gemini and a bunch of other ones. And this works really similar to that. However, when you integrate this with Claude Code then has the ability to automate different tasks that are on the web. It has the ability to take screenshots. So the reason that you might want to use an extension like this, if you're writing software, rather than you tell Claude what's wrong with the design, you can just say, hey, listen, I need you to open this up in the browser of Chrome, and I need you to turn this into whatever you want it to do, or you can talk about it in a very good and interactive way. The other thing that you can do is now you have user acceptance test cases that you can ask Claude Code to run. This is clicking, filling out the form, just like a user experience would do, rather than run unit or programmatic code-based test cases. So this is really the kind of the next level. And this is officially has been out since December timeframe, and before that, it was available for preview for certain folks on the Max plan as early as I think maybe October, September. So if you had early access, this is not new news to you, but the use case and how you should be thinking about the extension, that is definitely lots and lots of really cool stuff to talk about there. I'm going to get a little bit ahead of myself to talk about another reason you might want to use this. There's plugins that we'll get to in a second, but in plugins, there is this Ralph Wiggum plugin, and if that name sounds familiar, that's the booger-nosed kid on The Simpsons. Yeah, well, I forget that guy's name.
Oh,
he's the bully.
He's the bully.
Let's see if we can use Google here to Ralph. See if we can pull. There he is, and there he is.
Oh yes,
picking his nose. And so Ralph Wiggum's up there. Anyway, so that's the name of this plugin, and all this is a programmatic way of using a loop inside of your Claude Code. And so, when you run this plugin, you basically say, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. And you can set a max number of loops and iterations. You can tell it a definition of done when you feel, and when I say you, I mean AI Claude. You could say when you, Claude, the AI, feels that you're done, then you can give us a promise name of completed or something like that. And so when it detects as it goes through another iteration of it, it can really help to create an outcome that is fantastic without you having to do it. So, for example, if you asked it to do something, it will go through and come up with outcome version A. And then if you ask it to do it again, outcome version, then you get B. And why this is so helpful, and we've talked a lot about this, Sean, I think maybe 2 or 3 shows ago we talked about it, but this is AI is undeterministic. You do not get the same output. If I were to re-record this show tomorrow in duplicate and then watch it back and do the transcript based on what Sean says, what I say, our interaction points, they're all going to be different, right? But the show content contextually is the same. And it's the same thing with AI. And so what you can do is version A, version B, version C. Now you've got all of these that in an iteration loop and in the instruction, you can say, blend the best of the best together to create the final outcome. And so there's lots of different interesting ways that you can use this Ralph Wiggum loop or this technique in prompting or having outcomes or output based on whatever it is. When you're talking about creating a full-blown application, this is something that is super, super important. So anyway, let's go one step back to go 3 steps forward. And so what we're going to do is just talk to you real quick about installing Claude Code on whatever PC or flavor that you have. For Mac, it is saying for Mac OS and Linux, you can run this. Now, personally on Mac, what I do is I run Brew. Brew on my Mac, Brew on my Mac Mini. I have a laptop, I run it there. And that's my preferred method of installation. Although the native installation, this is just using curl. I don't know, to me, with all of the other tooling that I use, personally, I find Homebrew. I would say the least effective is probably the NPM, but it is the Node way of dealing with it. You're going to definitely make sure you have to have Node installed. I will tell you from a best tip perspective, if you run Claude Code through the Node version of the installation, notoriously, you're going to write some server code or write some type of code that uses Node or NPM or NPX. And if you're writing that and you're troubleshooting it, Claude has a notorious way of getting confused and spun around. And what it'll do is it'll kill all of the Node processes. Well, guess what happens when you do that? Claude kills itself. And so by suicide, you lose all of the context of what you were doing. And so you could be in a very long session with Claude. And if you lose that context, it's 5 steps back to go 1 step forward. So my best practice on the installation is to avoid NPM like the plague when it comes to installing. Use Brew on Mac, use the native installation here. On Windows, where is Windows? Windows. Somewhere around here is Windows. Overview. Why am I not seeing this? Did they change this already?
Again, a really good time for me to pipe up and say, like, this technology is changing all the time. People talk about how the hardware market is changing. The software chart is changing even faster. And, while we're talking about Claude Code right now, I can tell you we weren't talking about Claude Code a year ago. And now it is the secret sauce that a lot of my friends, family, compatriots are using to do some really interesting things. The challenge with Claude Code is it is non-deterministic. And what that means for developers is they don't get to control specifically the way it does what it does. And for some of the OCD developers out there, that is not a good thing. For the people who are ultra controlled on coding, Claude Code is like chalkboard scratching. But for the people who are the product managers, who are the visionaries, who are the startup founders out there, there is not a more powerful tool to bring to life a business use case faster than with Claude Code.
I would 100% agree. Now, one of the things I'm going to show you a little bit later is some tooling for you OCD folks out there that Sean had mentioned, ways of providing a little bit of governance and some guardrailing to get you a little closer to your state of perfection, as opposed to just letting it do what it will do out of the box if you let it. So here's the PowerShell command. This is the one I would recommend if you're on Windows to go ahead and run your Claude this way. And then there's a bunch of other Claude Code commands and references that you can click over here on the references link at the top, and it'll take you into there. But the main things that I want to focus today is around these features that is building with Claude Code, because there are so many of these items that's in here. And the reason I want to start off here in the documentation is because it's a lot easier for you to, if you know where it is, the original source for the documentation, you can read about it. And I'll show you where this stuff exists in the command line tool. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to pop this open. I am in my David Soden home folder. So if you're on a Mac, it's just users, and you can go into your user profile. On Windows, you can simply just go to, if you do percentage, which is like wildcards or mean variables. Can't chew bubblegum and talk. You type in user profile, I believe it's one word, and you hit enter, it will take you right into your home folder. Okay, so if you're not sure how to get there, that's it. Otherwise, if you want to go the old-fashioned school way, you can come out to the PC, you can go to the C drive, you can come down to users, and then obviously you should know what your name is. And then from here, all you do is type CMD in the ribbon bar, and this will take you into a command line, and this will take you into a DOS box. And so if I type in dir, I see all of the stuff that I'm seeing here in the graphical user interface from behind. But more importantly, when I'm in here, I can go to Claude. And as soon as I type that, it'll ask me, do I want to trust this folder, which it always does, of which I'll say yes. And then lo and behold, I'm in there. Now you may notice something that's interesting there. I have this down here at the bottom, which I'll get to in a little bit. This is called a status line, and I'll give you a quick shortcut on how to deal with all of that. But how you get to all of these commands that I'm going to show you, you just use the / command. And as you go through this / and I'm arrowing down on the keyboard, you can go through all of these options. Now, these options are available in the documentation, which is what I wanted to focus on showing you today. And I wanted to talk to you more about why to use them, when to use them, and how you could use them. Okay, so the first one is creating custom sub-agents. About, I don't know, 4 or 5 shows ago, I talked to you about sub-agents or creating agents. And you do it with the / agent command, and you can create agents. Now, we did a really ridiculous one about, I think it was a cooking recipe or something that I did. and showing you how to create like a chef or ingredients. I don't remember the exact use case, something fictitious, not to get too geeky and technical. But the bottom line is you create subagents. You can also tell Claude to execute subagents. And there's a bunch of stuff on Claude Code's document repository where they have a bunch of subagents that you can download, and all they are is markdown documents. It's like a persona or a role. So if you think about any business process that you're doing in your work, your environment, and you take your job description, you can ask Claude Code or AI to, hey, convert this job description into an agent and then describe all of the different roles, maybe tell me some good guardrail suggestions, and then you can go back and tweak it and do whatever. That's how you do an agent. Now, how you use the agent, you either @mention the agent or / and then select the agent, or you ask Claude Code in your prompt, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. You have, and then name out the agents. You can @mention them in that use case, and saying, use these agents where appropriate to finish the task. And I had mentioned that Ralph Wiggum loop. That's an excellent use case of that. Now, the reason that subagents are so powerful, if you think about the main window that you're typing in Claude Code. So if I just start using Claude Code here and just saying, hi, how are you? Create me an app, blah, 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 blah. There is a 200K context window. If you're not familiar, just think about it as it's a finite number of amount of space that you have to where it can keep in mind its context of what it's doing. Now, Claude Code is excellent out of the box. It will auto-compact almost all of the time. 98% of the time, it will just do its thing. The problem when you let it do its thing when it wants to do it, it typically will only do it when you run out of space. The problem is if you get to the point where, or you're in a technique where it takes too much context too quick, it will fill itself up and then it will get stuck. It won't be able to compact. And then unfortunately, you're going to lose everything you're working on in context. So that's the reason for the status line. So if I were to get into a project and I start saying, here, I'll show you an example. I'll just say hi, just so that it can come back with an interesting answer. And then you'll see the context window show up. So now I have a context window here at the bottom. And you might be saying, wow, I just said hi and answered how can I help you today? And you like, what is filling up this context window at 16%? There's a bunch of overhead that comes along for the ride. Anyway, the key here is with the status window, you don't get to see this. So in order to figure out, where you are, you're going to have to come down here to your status. And if you run status, it's going to give you some information here along with the different tabs. So here's your configuration. This is information about your usage, but there's also a context, if I remember correctly. Yep, context window command it'll give you. And so this is what's going on in your context. So I told you there's a bunch of overhead that comes along for the ride. The context window is all these blocks, and these blocks that are empty are free. The auto compact buffer is already filling itself up, right? So you can see that all this together is what's making up the overhead. Now you have MCP tools, you have skills, you have messages. And so that's why I'm talking to you today about Claude Code and the documentation, because you need to understand all of these tools go into this context window. And 200K is, while it's okay, it's getting smaller and smaller the more and the more stuff that they pack into here. And that's why this status line that I was showing you today is so important. So let me just run a clear on this one so we can start fresh. So that's essentially what subagents are, and so how you would want to use them. And the other main thing is, going back to finish this up, because I went on the tangent of showing you the context, is that subagents have their own context window. And they report back to the main calling agent what has come and transpired out of it. So if you think of your interactive session as a orchestration point of entry, you can send all the subagents to burn up the context, and all that context stuff gets sent into there. And then what happens is you get your active session working in a much more concise way, and you won't have to compact it as much. So sub-agents are super powerful. There's other ways of getting down here. We'll get to the skills in just a moment. The plugins are really cool because plugins are things that not only can you create, but there is a marketplace of plugins. So let's show you what these plugins are, and we'll talk a little bit about it. And this is where you'll find the Ralph Wiggum plugin. So here I am on Windows, and because I'm on Windows, I'm going to have different tools available to me in the marketplace. So if I come over here to marketplaces, and I'm using the arrow keys on my keyboard, and if you can see right across the top, if you can see where my mouse is moving, you got plugins, discover, installed. And so if you move left and right, this will flash. And then if you arrow up and down, you can go through the menu. So here we can add a marketplace. Here is the actual Claude Code, official Claude Code. Yeah, Claude Code marketplace. And then you have 13 available plugins that are available within this marketplace. Now, if you're on Linux or if you're on Mac, you have a whole bunch of extra cool tools that's available to you. Keep in mind that Windows is the redheaded stepchild of the trio of operating systems that you can use. You can get around this. This is how you used to have to run Claude Code, and up until probably of June, July timeframe of last year, before they made it available for Windows, maybe a little bit later, September. I used to have to run this in a Windows subsystem for Linux, or WSL as it's called. And so you had all of the Linux power. And so a lot of people are still running Claude Code through or via WSL, which I still do from time to time just to keep up. But I do like to see what's going on with Windows. But nonetheless, the marketplace is more expansive if you use it in WSL, Linux, or if you use it on Mac. So with regards to the 13 plugins, you have a Agent SDK. You have this Claude Opus 4.0 migration. Each one of these does different things. The notable ones is this Hookify, is this feature dev, and also if we come down here, the plugin dev is quite helpful because it has a comprehensive toolkit for the Claude Code plugins, especially if you're creating your own plugins. And then here is that Ralph Wiggum. Now to install something, you just hit the space bar, and it puts a little star in it. You hit it again, it'll deselect it. But that Ralph Wiggum is just a programmatic loop for AI that allows you to do it. If I arrow once to the right, you can see what's installed here. I have a Shaden CN plugin. This is, if you're not familiar, this is my secret to the sauce about how I create lots of really cool looking software. Not only have AI programmatically do what it needs to do, but by referencing the Shaden CN, and those of you that are not familiar, I'll just type Shaden CN so we can go there. This is a component network that allows you to have a bunch of really cool pre-baked widgets. They're already done, and contextually, all you have to do is wire them up. And Claude Code with the MCP server plugin allows you to do a lot of this really, really cool stuff. And not only will you get great programmatic stuff, the one thing that Claude kind of sucks at is the graphical user interface, which is I was like, you know what, let me take the bull by the horns and get rid of it. And let's just give it something. And as soon as I threw this MCP server at it for the user interface side of it, it's been day and night difference for what actually comes out of the box. And the other thing that I'll show you that I don't think is available in this one, but it is available in the Linux and it's available on the Mac. They have this. Oh, actually, it is here. Here it is. I have it installed. It's called the front end design, and I have this there as well. So what I do is I specifically in my prompt call out Shaden CN, or I can say leverage the front end design plugin that you have and just call it as such because Claude is aware of what it has. And it does a pretty decent job, although I'm biased. I've been using it so long and have such great success with it. The Shaden CN is really, really a huge thing. I'll show you something that I was able to leverage with the Claude Code MCP server. And I'll go to this open source application that you can go up on GitHub and find it. But I will just go ahead and log into this so you can see what the user interface is. So in addition to this and the dashboard and all of the different stuff. There's not a whole lot to really see here because I don't have anything a lot to show you. If I go under, let's see here, let's go under settings, security, appearance. I have both light mode and dark mode that's available in this system. I also have this Chrome extension that I was able to write. And so let me just go log back in here with this Chrome extension, get this thing all logged up, and I've got it connected successfully. So now when I click it, it's connected. Now, if I show the sidebar, I now have the ability to go to any site that I want to, and I still keep my timer. So this is PMO, Project Management Office. And so people can log their time against projects. And so as they switch through tasks, it's really easy to just log your time. Anyway, this is complicated stuff. And having Claude Code write this type of robust application, plus plugins for Chrome, plus your UI, UX, all of this stuff takes a tremendous amount of resources and skill in order to be able to do this. And when you're using the plugin, it is just super, super fast. So the MCP plugin for this is just like day and night as far as accelerating your time. So explore the plugins, go up to the marketplace, read your own or create your own if you find a need for it. And then you can go ahead and get to the documentation about how to discover, install, and also to create them. All that's there. Before I move on, Sean, do you have anything to add or want to throw any questions?
No, I mean, again, I think you're laying a good foundation of the bits and bytes under the Claude Code. Each one of these pieces is part of the story that you're going to have to figure out for yourself. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? I think you're showing a really good precursor of, hey, here's the bit, here's the role it plays. And I like to think of Claude Code as a symphony, right? You're the orchestrator. You're the guy at the top saying, okay, this is what I want it to sound like. But you're going to have to step down to the violin section and say, okay, guys, you're going to need to act like this. You're going to need to hire the individual people so that your symphony sounds correctly. And a lot of people will jump in with Claude, throw something at it, and then give the feedback of, hey, it's not what I wanted, so I moved on.
Yep.
We are not at a point where AI is asking you specifically answer these questions and do things. What I tell people is if you don't want to learn how to do these things, that's fine. The best course of action is sit down and write a 10 to 100 page document on what you're trying to do and why you're trying to accomplish it, and putting as much detail as possible so that the AI can figure out what you're wanting to do without taking this step. But I can tell you, writing a detailed document is not something developers usually like doing. In fact, it's hard to find even product managers really liking documentation to that degree. So you got to pick your poison. Do you want to learn how all these things work and employ them judiciously so that you know you're getting the outcome? Or do you want to take the brute force and ignorant approach to writing a mosaic of what you're trying to accomplish and letting AI figure it out?
Yep. No, absolutely well said. I want to go back to an earlier thing that you had mentioned in the opening, talking about those programmers that have OCD. So circling back to the subagents, a subagent is something that you can control. And you can also, when you create a subagent, I told you it's a markdown document, you with the OCD must have a process, and you should know what you want. You know the steps that you do to produce what outcome that you need to do. And so one of the things, if you're familiar with Markdown code, it's pretty simple. It's just a bunch of hashtags and dashes and things of that nature. you should put a rules section in there, and the rules serves as the guardrail. Now, coming full circle, skills is a little bit different, but it's very similar. Has almost the same outcome with some subtlety as far as how expansive it can be, and how you can kind of loop and plug it in. The way things are going to go, skills are more granular tasks or tactical things, whereas an agent is more of a human in the loop. Well, not human in the loop, but more of a human aspect of, or think of it as a role or a persona. And the role or the persona does specific tasks. So the skill, so for example, if you're an accountant, you might handle accounts payable. You might handle accounts receivable. Those are skills of an accountant. The subagent or the agent is the accountant. Okay, so maybe that makes more sense in context. So these are what skills are, but skills are repeatable processes. So if you're doing something very specific, if you're a programmer, think of object-oriented programming, think of classes, instantiation, method overriding, loading, overloading, blah, 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 blah. All of that stuff. It's very similar here, but in context of how you would create and craft an AI. These repeatable processes are great because you can share them with colleagues. You can share them across the organization. There's lots of really, really cool things to do here. And not only there's skills that are really helpful here, you can use skills with the pretty graphical user interface that I showed you earlier, where you're not dealing with Claude Code, you're just dealing with the regular Claude interface. And so those skills can be then plugged in on that side. So very, very powerful. Highly suggest to do it. You don't have to worry about writing the skills. You can use Claude Code and say, I need you to create me a skill for X, and whatever X is, you have to put it in there. But again, don't try to boil the ocean. Don't try to make an agent out of it, because if you're going to do that, make an agent and then create a skill. And then in the agent, say you should use these skills to do your job. And that's how you'll write your prompt out there. But the key here is this documentation is to create a skill is very basic. It's a skills MD. It goes into a skills folder within your profile. So if I go back out to my user profile, and if I come back in here to Claude, I have all of these different folders that's here. Now, I don't have a skills folder yet because I haven't created skills in this instance. I do have it in my Mac Mini, where I use Claude Code over there. But in any event, skills, they go into this dot Claude. And if you're on a Mac, if you're unfamiliar, you're not going to be able to find this folder. You're going to have to hit Shift Command period, which will allow you to see hidden files and folders. On a PC, it's under the View menu, and it's under Show, and down here it says Hidden Items. Make sure that that's turned on, because some of this stuff might not be available to you, and that's how you get to these hidden type of file folders and stuff. But in any event, this is why and how you're going to do the skills. It's a combination of a skills MD, and then there is a specific place that it has to live, and there is a format to it. So anyway, it's not hard. It's pretty straightforward, but the rewards of what this thing can do is awesome. Now, skills, if you're a developer, you can refer to executing scripts, executing code. This is essentially just the communication of the orchestration thing. Skills is, and the skills MD is just the entry point to whatever creative imagination you want. These skills, I can't emphasize them enough, are extremely, extremely powerful. And when you use this in conjunction with the Ralph Wiggum loop, man, really powerful things can happen there. I'm going to skip past output styles because we're running a little bit long. I just want to focus on hooks and the MCP I alluded to a little bit earlier. But hooks are really powerful with Claude Code. There's a bunch of hook events. If you know what a webhook is, these are things that are available programmatically that you can call at different particular points. And you can see they have pre-used tools. Pre-submission one. The one that I use a lot is notification, so that when I have a bad habit, for better or for worse, but it's my choice, so I do it, and I trust it because I know what I'm doing. But I run this in the dangerous mode, which means it doesn't have to prompt me and keep asking me for permissions. So this thing will just run automatically on my Mac Mini, which I'm not in, but I have it on my desk. And so I use the notification and I use the stop. hook. So when it's done doing whatever it needs to do, it chimes, it tells me, I have a voice that says, Claude Code complete. And I actually used 11 Labs to create the audio for that. So it's just really cool. And it sounds like Jarvis. And so anyway, it's just really powerful to use it. Now, I'm using it in kind of a tongue-in-cheek way, but there are other events here that you could use that will programmatically kick off the next step, invoke a skill, if this, then that, and a bunch of other really cool stuff. Programmatic usage, this is something that you should just go through and read on your own, but this is a way of programmatically executing and dealing with Claude. So instead of running Claude in the command line utility, the quick explanation here is you just run Claude. The P is your prompt, and then you will put your prompt in here. And so you can execute Claude Code within your applications, within your code, as long as Claude Code is configured and running on the desktop. So programmatic ways of using Claude Code. Not a lot of people, when they get into this, realize and understand, but I use this with N8 in conjunction with N8N, and then I run commands through the command area, and then I'm able to run Claude Code behind the scenes and do a bunch of really cool stuff. So there's a place and a time to use this. MCPs, everybody knows what this stuff is. I have used the MCPs in conjunction with Claude, and if you pile this up in conjunction with Docker Desktop, which I will bring over here real quick. Here's my Docker Desktop. You can have, instead of hosting containers, you can host MCP servers. And if you browse the available MCP servers, you can take your Claude Code to literally the next level, and you don't have to programmatically know how to deal with any of these setting up of an MCP server. Security-wise, it's more secure because these are trusted ones. They've already been vetted through Docker Desktop. But just imagine flipping on and turning on all these switches in addition to what Claude Code can do now. All of this is there. So I don't know if you're catching the common theme here. Claude Code is the bomb. And Gemini is right up there with Claude Code. Maybe we'll do a show one day with that. But in the future, in part 2 of this, we're going to show you how to use essentially your resume to tear down the resume. We'll put a prompt in there. We'll give you a bunch of prompts as part of the show. And it will walk you through some Q&A. It'll actually give you maybe a little bit of an interview to help round out the database. And the whole key and the whole point here is that as you're looking for jobs, as you're applying for jobs, it's a real pain in the neck, especially if you're applying for literally hundreds or thousands of jobs. You need to create a resume that's tailored towards that job. That's the unfortunate truth, because you're combating the application tracking system, or the ATS, on the side of the employer. And if you don't make it through the automated robot gate, you're never even going to be seen by a human. So leveraging Claude Code, leveraging AI in order to do these types of things is really powerful. So we'll be giving you a demo here in the future. Sean, anything to add before we wrap up?
No. Again, I just think it's very important people to know what Claude Code is and what it does and the value it provides, because this is the model I believe development is going to be of the future. Now, is this perfect? No, it's not. It is not perfect yet. But you can see the amount of investment. I know on if you follow me on X and see who I follow, lots of startup founders and such, they are quite clear in what they believe is the biggest fundamental enabler that they have is they can take an idea and provide a impactful demo version to somebody, and they do not need to hire a group of resources overseas and manage them for 6 months to get it out. Now, this is, to me, a very niche use case, because a lot of things can be done beyond that. And I think you're showing where it's going beyond that. So I think this is very helpful for anybody who is in the business of understanding digital transformation. And I'm really glad that we're showcasing it here today. Excellent.
Well, thanks, Sean. So that is all that we have for you guys this week. for this Wednesday's edition of the Transformation Leaders Podcast. So if you haven't figured it out, we are here every Wednesday by now. And so we look forward to seeing you in 2026. Sean and I are still working through the logistics to bring some guests onto the show. As always, in the QR code top left corner, you should find a QR code. And at the bottom, there's a typed URL that you can type in. That's where you can reach a hold of Sean and I through the contact form. We also have links over to our LinkedIn profile. And if you do fill out the form, Sean and I get that at the same time. So we're happy to either discuss what's gone on in the show if you have questions about specific topics that we've discussed, or if you'd like to reach out to us to get on the show, we'd love to have you here to figure out what you got to talk about. Typically, we stick to all things AI, but that doesn't mean we have to. If you've got some transformation stories or some leadership qualities that you want to bring to the show, a couple of shows ago, maybe, I don't know, September-ish timeframe, or maybe even earlier, we showed you some of the, I forget what they're called. There's a bunch of little cards. And so they do different things around project management and leadership and things of that nature. For the PIP deck, that's what they are. I've been drawing a blank for the longest time. But anyway, that's it for this week's edition. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.